Well, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Have you ever found yourself living life in the mundane? Maybe in your career, or as a stay-at-home parent, or as a patient, or a student, or even someone in retirement, even though I heard you work pretty hard after retirement. Maybe you understand the scenario. I've seen it myself in my own life. We wake up every morning often tired from the day before. We take a shower, brush our teeth, and comb our hair. We eat and even maybe exercise. Many of us, we get the children off to school and we start our day and we travel to our destination either by our own vehicle or public transportation. But many times if we're driving, we're honking our horn at other people because they don't have the same sense of urgency to get to the place we're trying to get as we have. But even in the midst of that, you reach your destination. Maybe it's work. You go to meetings, you talk, you look at your watch, ready to get off work. You drive home rapidly to get home, meet your family, eat dinner, read, watch TV, and you go back to bed. Only to wake up the next day to do the very same thing. You see, living life in a routine, a life of the mundane, causes us sometimes to miss the awe of God. And when I'm referring to the awe of God, I'm referring to that overwhelming and inspiration feeling of reverence and adoration produced by, which is grand, extremely powerful, like our Father in heaven. As Pastor Scott discussed last week, we will discuss over the next couple of weeks, recapturing the awe of God in our Creator who is in heaven. He gave us some points. He told us we should trust God. We should offer forgiveness to others. He said that we should step out in faith. And we should do the thing that God has called us to do, even looking in our own lives or the lives of those around us and seeing the awe of God in the midst of that. Today, I want to take a different route. Today I want to talk about the awe of God and recapturing this particular awe of God as we acknowledge His holiness as Creator, as we lose the awe of self, and as we live our everyday life in worship to the Most High. You see, this awe of God is so powerful. It's so mighty that if you read the book about the Israelites as they departed from Egypt and they were leading their way into the promised land, they didn't even want to see this glory of God. They could not even withstand the awe of God. And as I think in my own life, and I think of each and every one of us, sometimes I believe we should be in the same position, that the glory and the awe of God should be so powerful and so overwhelming that we could not bear to stand in the midst. Yet, because of Jesus Christ, we have this privilege. We have this privilege to capture the awe of God each and every moment of our lives. Let's start with recapturing the awe of God through acknowledging God as Creator. That's right, God as Creator. You see, we are introduced to the truth of God, many of us in the book of Genesis, and some of us even learned more about the God and God as Creator when we were young in school. I remember a song we used to sing, maybe some of you sang it as well. It said, God created, night and day, night and day. God created, sky and clouds. God created land and plants. God created moon and the stars. God created the birds and the fish, the land animals and humans too. God created and thought it was all good. You see, our Father in heaven is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. You see, and as we grow in our life, we come to realize that without God, there's no you or me. There's no air to breathe inside of our lungs. There's no land on which to walk or even to plant our vegetation. Because God is all in all things, because He alone is the creator. I just think of the human body. Last week I had an opportunity to be at the Big C. The Big C is a men's group here that's held here at Northway. And one of the speakers, a friend of mine, a brother in Christ for sure, he was speaking. And he was talking about the power of God and how he was able to acknowledge God by understanding the workings of the human body and how all bones work together with each other and the muscles begin to work one another and the veins and how it all comes together. And we don't need solar panels and we don't need batteries and those things. But God finds a way to keep our hearts pumping and blood moving us day to day. There's no way that I can open my eyes in the morning and not see the awe of God in that. To bask in His glory and in His presence. You see, as many of you know, I've been battling with cancer for over the last 3 years. For a while it had gone away, and recently the doctor said it had returned. But you see, I'm living in the awe of God. And I'm understanding that no matter what's going on in my body, first of all, nothing that does not belong to God can live inside of me. But second of all, God has the power and the ability to get rid of any sickness and diseases. It's in His promises that He is Jehovah Rapha. He is our creator. He is our healer and our protector. You see, this is captured, this all of God, in Psalms 33. 9 through 6. It says, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of His mouth all their host. He gathers the waters of the sea as a heap. He puts them deep in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of Him. For He spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm. But you see, sometimes the created, that's us, we have the tendency to take these things for granted. You know, the common moments of our day. You see, I say sometimes we're like those spoiled kids that have everything, but they run around as if they have nothing, forgetting that they have all. You see, we have this expectation that the sun will rise in the east and that it would set in the west, that the moon and the stars will quickly follow. Actually, some of us, we schedule our lives around this sort of system. We have to be in awe of God, not forgetting. You see, for several years, I've been reading the year in the Bible. You read a part every day, a few chapters, and by the end of the year, you're through the Bible. And recently, before thinking about this sermon, I was reading in the book of Job, and it reminded me how you can have everything, yet forget that God is creator. You see, many of you know the story of Job. Job was blessed. He was found in favor of God spiritually, physically, materially, and he lived in this holiness. Then one day, the devil asked God if he could challenge Job's faith. So God permitted, as long as you don't touch his soul, go ahead. So resultantly, Job lost his family, some of his friends, his health, his home, his livestock, and all of his possessions. You see, he was left alone, lying with bruises all over his body on a cot made for one. And surrounding him was some friends who often made ill-conceived attempts to comfort him. But during the conversation, Job would argue that he was a righteous man. And because he was a righteous man, because he did everything that God asked him to do, he deserved a better life. In life, we could imagine that maybe Job took for granted all of the wealth that God had provided for him. Yet one of his friends tried to remind him. Benadab, one of his associates, reminded him, as he reminds us in the text, that we must live in the awe of God no matter what. In chapter 25, the text reads, he's saying, dominion and all belong to God. He establishes order in the heights of heavens. You see, in this text, it reminds Job again and his readers to acknowledge the power of God and to recapture the all of God. For some, this comment may have ended the conversation. For me, I'm reminded God's in control. Okay, I may not have to think about it again. I understand that in my own life. But Job, he continues to feel removed from that awe as he reminisces from time to time the trappings of the glory he once were in, and when the Almighty was yet with him. But God will soon answer him in chapter 38, declaring, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? All that Job was saying, as if God was not in his presence, as if God was not in control, no matter him sitting in the misery of his situation. God wanted to know, who was this? And one of my favorite parts, he asked him, he said, were you there when I laid the foundation of the earth? He reminds Job that he is creator. And to acknowledge God as creator would allow Job to witness that God was in awe himself, and that he should have gratitude to the Father. And as you know the story, shortly after, all things was returned to Job, even 10 times. You still with me? I didn't hear you out there. People, sometimes our situation causes us to take advantage of the gifts of God. And I know the message isn't easy. But many times, our opportunities to live in the wonders and the works of God are pushed to the side. But today, I just want to remind you that we must recapture that all. That we must recapture that wonder, that love for God, knowing that he is with you in each and every situation. You see, we can also recapture the awe of God in our everyday, ordinary moments if we lose the awe of self. That's right. I said if we lose the awe of self. You see, this is another forgettable moment in our walk with the Most High. As we live life with our education and with our success and with our many accomplishments, those of us who experience these sort of things, we forget about God and that we are in need of a creator. It reminds me of the story of the scientist. I guess he was praying or somehow he had this conversation with God. And he had decided to say to himself, God, I need you no longer. He said, we have cures to diseases. We know how to clone people. We can even make body parts. There's really no more need for you. And God sat back and God listened for a while. And he said, I'm going to challenge you to one thing. So the scientist was like, go ahead, challenge me to anything. And God said, we're going to play a game. We're going to play the creation game. And the scientist said, that's great. Let's get ready to play. And the scientist went down to grab some dirt so he could make it human. And God said, no. I made that too. You see, sometimes we have to realize that God is in control. This was a reality check for the scientist, that life is not about him or his accomplishments. Our life and our meaning is about God. We often lose this awe of God as we continue to promote ourselves. How can one rest in the awe of God when our infatuation with self builds barriers between God and us? I hope you're hearing me. Our own infatuations with our own self, wanting people to be in awe of who we are. So oftentimes with those behaviors, we lead people away from the awe of God to the awe of me. We have these tendencies. I'm always picking on social media, and I've been thinking about how many people post social media texts. And throughout the years, they just post all their accomplishments, all the wonderful things that they've done, but they never once give attribute to God. Just think about the people who have watched your posts throughout the years. And I wonder if they revere you and your strength and your ability to succeed, or do they look and say, what a mighty and wonderful God that is behind all of this? I think of husbands who are in awe of their wives, and wives who live in awe of their husbands, each working so that their spouse will live in awe of them, sometimes trying to outdo each other so that they look better in each other's eyes. And I think as husbands and wives, we should have admiration for one another, but all belongs to God. Parents, we do the same. We have a slight desire for our children to live in the fear and reverence of us as parents. Yes, they must respect us and honor us, for that's biblical. But we only teach them to reverence God. We too must remind our children to live in the awe of God. That everything that we provide is not because we're smart, well-educated, but because we serve a God who loves us so much that we are in his blessing and his favor. Sometimes we just have to lose the all of self. I wonder how many ministers in our current age of preaching fall to the temptation to craft sermons that please people instead of sharing the truth of the gospel. I understand this is difficult because after seminary, I struggled with my own self. I wanted to have sermons that people would love and that would give them all the prosperity and tell them the riches and glories that God has for them, and that be it. But God said my message is much deeper than that. Yet, many stand in the pulpit week after week trying to share messages where the people don't say all in God, but all in that speaker. Even ministers must lose the awe of self in order to preach the awe of God. When I think of this, I was searching through Scripture and I saw the Apostle Paul and Barnabas and how they understood the need as people of God to resist people worshiping them and being all of them. In Acts 14, 1-8, it reads, in Lystra, there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, "Stand up on your feet." At that, the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lithuanian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priests of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard this, what did they do? They tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only humans like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them." Our lives should be similar to Barnabas and Paul. We should not demand an all of self, but point others to the life and all of God, that they may recapture again that all of God in their life to where it's lived each and every day. One way to relinquish the all of God or the all of self is to be able to admit that each and every one of us are sinners saved by grace. That because we are sinners, we sin. And it's only because Jesus Christ that we are saved. You see, recently I've been pondering our motives behind such a denial of the truth of ourselves, and particularly my own, and my contemplation and prayer has led me to a consistent message that sometimes our pride causes us to present ourselves as righteous because we want others to admire us. And sometimes we even want to admire ourselves. But again, I have to say that we are sinners saved by grace. Sinners saved by grace. You see, it's because of Jesus Christ we are saved. He overcame and accomplished. Only through God's grace have we become victorious. Through Jesus Christ, our imperfections have become perfect. In hiding our own sin, we make others be more in all of us, wondering how we made such great achievements as married couples, as parents, as business owners, as professionals, and as friends of others. Yet, to recapture the all of God, we must relinquish that. Finally, we are to recapture the all of God through our faithful worship as a lifestyle. Acts 2:43 reads, when all the people came, and the Holy Spirit came upon the crowd, this is what was said, and awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs being done through the apostles. To live in the all of God is to live a life of worship to the Father. You see, during worship, we should leave the cares and anxieties of the world in the parking lot as we enter into His presence. You see, I learned this in seminary, that we should, in each and every worship, see a glimpse of heaven. We shouldn't care what the person is thinking next to us. You see, this is even why I say we should seek diversity in our worship service, because we should look as heaven will look. For in heaven, we won't see the color of people's skin. Our economic status will not matter. Our titles in the church will mean nothing. It would not matter if the worship team was on key or off key. Nor would it matter the modes and methods in which we worship, because our attention would be on God. Who would care what the preacher's wearing? Because our attention and our awe would be an overwhelming presence of God. And when we are called in a place of worship, this is God's call to us, that we may be in awe. Can you imagine with me what this world will look like, or what the Lord refers to when we think of worship? All together, everyone who calls themselves a follower of Christ being in the all of God. And with this worship, it should not stay in those places, but this worship should be able to follow us outside of the doors of the church into our daily lives. It should show us new lenses of looking into the world, the day, the night, work, diseases, accomplishments. In seminary, we call these lenses hermeneutics, and that's how you see the text. But you see, our hermeneutics should not be a hermeneutics of the world. How we see the world should be how Christ sees the world, as we live in the awesomeness of Jesus. Hebrews 12:28-29 reads, therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. This again is in the everyday of our life. You see, when we look at life through these lenses, we begin to see the world in a better way. To live in the all of God is to have my directions and actions in Him. It causes me to live in adoration and thankfulness for the blue skies in the morning and the dew on the grass and the change of colors of the trees. To live in the all of God has me to live with my wife and call her my lover and my friend and my partner as we raise our children, as we parent our children, to lead them to love God and to be in the all of God and together lead them to be productive in this society. You see, it's to spend time with friends and relatives, that our schedules do not allow us to be removed. And even in our darkest times, we are encouraged and assured of our victory in Jesus Christ. So I say to everyone, let us worship God in all, not only in our small groups or on Sundays, but each and every moment, waking up, being in adoration and thankfulness to the Father. I think life would be a bit different. For me, I had to learn this. And it took over 35 years of my life to start to learn. And some of those years being a preacher. But laying on my back and learning to watch the birds and knowing that when the birds came to my window, believing that it was God coming to my window. Looking at the falling leaves and understanding the power of God. And I'm going to tell you, be truthful, I have a road to go. The doctors want to operate on my leg on Monday. Yet I can't sit in misery. I must stand in the all of God. I must appreciate him and look in the world in such a different way, where sometimes nothing else matters but to live my life as Jesus would have me to live. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of Psalms 145. It says, I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. The Lord preserves all who loves him. My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless his holy name. Northway, we must live our life in the all of God. Thank you. I'm going to ask now if the campus pastors will come and to pray, and if the Holy Spirit so shall put it on your heart, that you might open up the doors to invitation, that people may recommit themselves or commit for the first time to recapture the all of God. God bless you.